Hey everyone, haven't made a video in a while, but I got the inkling to do some drawing, so I've been studying more about Bitcoin now that it's rocketing off again. I thought I would maybe put those two things together. I'll do some drawings and kind of explain Bitcoin at a very high level for those people who are interested in maybe researching it a little bit. The video here is going to be for people who have an interest in understanding what money is, people who aren't sure if Bitcoin fits that definition of what money is, anyone who wants a high-level understanding of blockchain. I'm not going to get too technical with this. And for anyone who likes to speculate on what future technology, what the future is going to look like just for people in their transactions every day. None of this is any kind of financial advice, so please don't take it as that. I'm going to start with this. Money is ubiquitous. It touches everyone on the planet, or nearly everyone on the planet, every day. So what happens to money and any transformation that money is going to make, it's going to affect everybody, or again, nearly everybody. So we all use money. We use it every day. Not a lot of people spend a lot of time understanding what it really is. For some reason, I found it fascinating. I found it fascinating when I was a kid. Still do to this day. It's not as boring as economics class makes it sound out to be. The history of money is actually really, really fascinating. I'm going to draw a distinction between currency and money in this video. Mike Maloney does a really good job in his video series, The Hidden Secrets of Money, drawing out this distinction. But for our purposes, we're going to say this. Money holds its value over time. Currency doesn't. Inflation affects currency. It doesn't affect money. And what money is a representation of time and energy and creativity. And you trade that representation of your time and energy and creativity for somebody else's time, energy, and creativity. That's going to make sense in a little bit. I'm going to go into that deeper. Now, what blockchain is, where the foundational technology for Bitcoin and the other cryptocurrencies, that's a new technology that enables Bitcoin and the other cryptocurrencies, tokens to work, this blockchain technology. It solves a problem that has existed in banking since there was banking. I'm going to explain that in a second too. And it really could only exist now, after we have this internet that reaches the whole world and reaches out to everyone's lives, in their pockets, on their phones. The internet was the stepping stone to this new way of doing money. So what's that age-old problem? When it kind of started off just on plain ledgers, right? People with quill pens are writing into a ledger everyone's account balances. The problem with keeping a ledger like this on a piece of paper was double booking, right? There are people who could, or bankers who maybe they're less than scrupulous, they would have one set of ledgers for what they said was in the account and another set of ledgers that they might show people. They didn't necessarily match. It could be errors or they could just be shysters, right? And this way of accounting, where a central authority in the bank, for this instance, you had to rely on their honesty that they were keeping straight books. So it required trust in a third entity, someone outside of yourself. So that's an age-old problem, and again, over time, certain banks and certain institutions, they cooked the books, they did double ledgers. Blockchain addresses this age-old problem of the double ledgers or having to trust a third party, because what blockchain is, it's a single ledger that exists on hundreds of thousands of computers, all networked together and kept in sync with what's called the consensus algorithm. Every transaction that happens is recorded on every copy of the ledger all over the world. So there's no real need to trust some other third party. The computer itself and the consensus algorithm records it correctly on all the different ledgers. It does take some time for certain blockchains. Other blockchains are faster. But that's why it's called a trustless system. We don't have to trust a third party. The ledger is open. Anyone can read it. Everyone can see that the transaction that happens in every copy of the ledger. And it really can't be shut down. Like a bank can collapse and all of a sudden you've lost your money that you put in there. But the blockchain ledger that's copied on all these different thousands of computers, you can take down this computer, this computer, this computer. But it's hundreds of thousands of computers, and they're all connected together. So you really can't destroy the blockchain. You can't destroy the ledger. And that's what they mean by decentralized. There are all these different copies of the ledger on all these different computers. If you want to spare the bandwidth on your computer for a copy of the ledger for whatever blockchain to exist on your computer, you can do that. I do that with a certain token. Again, depending on what token you use, some of those bandwidth requirements are very high, some of them are much lower. So then the question becomes, is Bitcoin really money? I said earlier that money is a representation of spent energy, time, and creativity. And in often cases, there's a limit on how much of the money exists, and that helps to maintain the value over time. So when you get something like the dollar, the Federal Reserve note, that's printed over and over just by clicking, and actually it's not even printed so much anymore, it's just a computer entry. So the difference between $100 and $1,000 is like one more press of the zero on the keyboard. Anyways, this infinite printing, it devalues everyone that's out in existence. If you think of it in terms of like Pokemon cards, there are common cards and there are rare cards. But if you take all those rare cards and you printed up as many of those as the common cards, they no longer are rare. They're no longer valuable. You wouldn't pay anything more for them because they exist as much as the common cards. So very much the same with currency. If the dollar bill keeps on getting printed and printed and printed, and it no longer becomes hard to come by, the value of the ones that are being held drops and drops and drops. And you see this over time. If you measure the value of a dollar across, say, something like gold, which is money, you see that the value of the dollar keeps dropping and dropping and dropping. Now, gold or precious metals, they can be considered money because they represent spent energy, time, and creativity. The time and the energy it takes to pull it out of the ground and to refine it down, that's spent energy, and it's all collected inside your single coin. And when you realize that a gold coin from the Roman era is still worth money, just like it is today, but you can't find a printed up currency bill from any kind of prior government that's worth anything any longer. Gold or silver, they hold their value because they don't get changed. Gold and silver are very, very stable elements. That's why they're shiny. That's why they don't deteriorate over time. They don't rust. And the supply is limited. Now, we don't really know how much exists on the planet, but we do know that there's a finite supply. So that's why gold is, again, spent energy. You took the time and energy to pull it out of the ground and refine it. And it doesn't disappear, doesn't rust, doesn't decay. Bitcoin is very much like precious metal in this way. In order to unlock a block in the ledger, a Bitcoin block, it takes time and energy on a computer program to what they call mine it. And I'm going to get to how this is done in a second. But coins are mined, and it's a spent amount of energy from the computer doing this calculation over and over again to find the right answer. And there's a limited supply. There's only going to be, they say, a certain 21 million solutions to the problem. Here, let's talk about how Bitcoin works. I'm going to work on a simple analogy. So Bitcoin is this. Every Bitcoin is an entry in that global ledger, the ledger that exists over and over again on these many different computers. It's actually more than that. Each Bitcoin entry, each ledger entry is 100 million Satoshis. But for simplicity's sake, let's just say, I'm going to keep us at the Bitcoin level. So every Bitcoin is a block on the ledger. That block gets unlocked. Each new block gets unlocked by thousands of computers. They're racing to try to beat the other computers to solve a math problem that gets harder and harder with each progressive ledger entry. So every time the solution happens to this equation, it unlocks a block, but the next solution takes harder to accomplish. So I can simplify this by saying, if we said that every Bitcoin, or I'm going to create a new blockchain and we'll call it, let's call it X-Chain. There might be an X-Chain out there, right? But I'm going to call it X-Chain. And I said that I'm going to unlock a ledger entry for every prime number between 1 and 999,999,999. I'm going to write a computer program that solves, is this number prime? It's going to go through all the numbers from 1 all the way up to 1 less than 1 billion. Every time we try to calculate if this number prime, right, it'll get harder and harder as we go further and further, closer to 1 billion. And computers can race to do this. And that's really that's a simplified version of what the blockchain, what the Bitcoin algorithm is trying to get computers to solve. And if I said it's only going to be from 1 to 1 billion, there's only going to be so many solutions to that, right? And that's same with Bitcoin. There are only going to be so many solutions to this algorithm. By making it harder for every solution, for every block to get unlocked, that's one level of deflation. The other thing that happens with Bitcoin in particular is it's called the halvening. So after it solves, in my example, let's say, solving the equation of is this prime from 1 to 500 million, let's say we unlock 16 spaces in the ledger. And then after that, I'm only going to unlock 8 spaces in the ledger. So from 500 million to 7,500 million, I'm only going to unlock 8 slots in the ledger. And then I'm going to half again, right? So from 750 million to 825 million, I'm only going to unlock 4 blocks on the ledger. So the halving decreases the reward of unlocking solving the problem by half every time. This is what Bitcoin does. And then again, it makes it harder and harder and less reward. So over time, every block that gets unlocked is worth that much more because it's harder to get to. For Bitcoin, there's only going to be 21 million solutions. And so it's going to take decades to solve them all. And there have already been some solutions. Some Bitcoins and ledger spaces have been unlocked, but the keys to get to that ledger entry space, they've been lost by on old computers or when people didn't think it was really going to be a thing and they just kind of did it and then they forgot about it. So it's estimated that really only 17 million Bitcoin will ever get into circulation. And that's on a planet of currently what we're at, 7.7 billion people, right? So there's not enough full Bitcoins to go around. But again, every Bitcoin is made up of 100 million Satoshis. So what we'll get to at a point is that we won't really be talking about Bitcoin any longer. We'll be talking and trading in Satoshis. That's what we're going to get to. The Satoshi level is going to be the dollar level. So if you own a full Bitcoin, you own 100 million Satoshis. It's like owning $100 million. Is the current thinking. I don't know if we'll ever get to that. We'll see that in our lifetime. But it's going to be significant to own a fair amount of Satoshis all the way to a single Bitcoin. The idea that blockchain technology is going to go away, become a fad, not relevant, I think that's just crazy to think that way. The blockchain technology, it's going to exist. They have other uses for this kind of technology, things called smart contracts, where a contract is automatically executed once certain conditions are met. So you can think of a thing like a mortgage or your car title. They could exist on the blockchain, and once you have satisfied the conditions for ownership without needing any third party to transfer the title to you, the title is just kept on the ledger, and once the conditions are met, now you own that ledger space for that title or that mortgage. So it'll make these, it's like a smart bond, smart contracts. They execute without needing a third party to get involved. I guess my final point is, out there, if you read any of the financial publications, you'll see that there's a lot of financial companies all over the world who are moving into the space. Some of them are doing it more quietly than others. But all the banks, all the fintech companies, they're all getting involved in blockchain and cryptocurrencies. And again, we had the big run-up in 2017 where a lot of people jumped in, they FOMO'd in, they got in at the peak of the market. Of course, just like market cycles do, if you watch my other video or if you look into the Wall Street cheat sheet, you'll see that markets are brought up on purpose and then crashed on purpose. The whole game is controlled in somewhat in order to kind of shake out weak hands and put all the control into the people who understand what the game is. So understanding the game is really, really important. But you can't ignore the idea that this technology is coming around. And yes, there'll be centralized tokens, like I said before, where there are only certain nodes that are authorized nodes that governments will come out with and other controlling bodies will come out with. Banks might come out with their own. But sort of like AOL tried to do their own internet inside the internet, there's some people who go along with it, but the vast majority of people wanted to run free outside of AOL's little, small little controlled internet. And that's what you're going to see with cryptocurrencies. While these centralized versions will come up, the vast majority of people will want to go to the outside ones, the ones that can't be controlled and can't be centralized. And we'll see a lot of people adopting these other cryptocurrencies. Ultimately, as I've advocated for many years, competition among currencies is what we'll have. Ultimately, competition is always better for the marketplace, better for the consumers, and so it'll be better for us. Anyways, that's my quick little talk on Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, blockchain technology. If you liked it, so you found it valuable, please give it a thumbs up and like it, and then maybe I'll get some other people to see the video as well. And if this is successful, we'll do some more of these. Cheers.